Hello, this is Renee Hahn with William Ravis Real Estate, and I am bringing you your Naples area market update. So this data, I say this every time, but I want to make sure if you're new listening for the first time or you watch these and you've just forgotten, the data I'm reporting on today is from April year over year. There's always a 1 month lag in data reporting because the Naples Area Board of Realtors wants to make sure that we are using the most up-to-date information. And sometimes there's lagging changes, lagging closings that are put into the system late after the closing. So again, this is April year over year. By the way, this is probably the first time you've seen me with my reading glasses on. Yes, I hit 51 this year, and it has finally gotten hard for me to continue to live in a world of denial where I can ignore the fact that my eyes are getting so bad. Anyways, let's just jump in. So if you recall from my last monthly market update, I had shared at the time that I was seeing early signs of a market shift. One of the things, if you don't know this about me, I am incredibly data driven when I do CMAs, when I do advisement of buyers on prices, and when I do market analysis. I watch the market every morning. Ask my husband, I leave my bedroom before I do anything else with my day, and I'm not a coffee drinker, so I can do this. I come into my office in my pajamas, and I'm looking over all the market data that's happened in the last since the last day I checked it. So I stay on top of the market a lot. And it's something I pride myself in because it's part of the reason I can tend to see things coming instead of watch things going. A lot of times people will wait to get the market statistics and they're like, oh, let me share the new shift. I typically see those happening. So the last market update, I had predicted that I was starting to see early signs of a market shift. And as we all know, we are living in an incredibly fluid market, not just for real estate, but particularly in real estate. Things can change and they can change really fast. I actually had commented at the time that it felt odd to be delivering the March data, again, because of the 1 month lag, when what I was going to tell you the March data said about the market was different than what I was already seeing in early April. Well, now we know that you're starting to see it in the numbers that I'm going to share with you. It's interesting because if you look at some of the factors, and there are many, this is a complex market. Rising mortgage rates have probably been reducing the number of buyers who can get pre-qualified for a home. Stock markets are putting some pressure on investments, which is going to naturally impact discretionary spending. However, it did not seem to negatively impact buyer interest during April. In fact, if you look at, even though in April, year over year, we were down 28% in showings, if you compare that to March, for example, there were over 200 more showing appointments during the month of April than were reported in March. And then this is what is, I think, pretty specific to the Naples market. 66.7% of all closed sales in April were cash sales. So this is why I always say you've got to watch the national market because a lot of our home buyers are coming from other areas, but you also have to pay attention to what your local market is doing because there can be variations. I will share the Naples Area Board of Realtors, and they're the ones that, we all are members of. If you're a realtor, you can be a licensed agent without being a realtor, but we take a code of ethics. They do all of the MLS listings run from them. So they produce the market data that we then share with you, and they track all the home listings and sales within Collier County and excluding Marco Island. And what they've been reporting is they're confident that the Naples area housing market has reached a crossroads. We just talked about that, and is making a turn towards what we call a more balanced and healthy market. I'm going to share some other statistics later that tell you, don't worry, sellers, it's still a good opportunity, but we are definitely seeing signs of a more balanced market. Let's talk about inventory. So after several months of record-breaking activity where the inventory was significantly down year over year, April actually was the first month since I think the start of COVID, believe it or not, where we had an increased level of inventory. And I remember telling people that I was working with at the time, again, because I stay on top of these things all the time, that I was seeing literally overnight a spike. So if you look, inventory during the month of April versus the same time last year, inventory was up 17%. Look at March was down 24%. February was down 47%. And the prior months were even down more. I think we hit at one time inventory being down 78%. So inventory was higher. And I'm going to share with you in a minute new listings. New listings were not necessarily the full culprit here. But what I saw happen is, people that were here during the season and they were looking left and they were looking right and they said, gosh, my neighbors are getting such premium prices on their properties. They didn't want to be disrupted while they were here using their homes, but on their way out in the month of April, when typically you're going to see inventory start to drop significantly from March, because it sort of is nearing the end of the season, if you will, the high selling season. I saw the opposite. I saw a bunch of them within a couple weeks kick in. And it was the same time that our traffic was starting to leave town. So the number of buyers naturally went down because of the seasonal effect. And some listings shot up, certain types of listings shot up. And so you're starting to see a little bit of a buildup in inventory. If you look at single family home inventory, even though this shows overall inventory as only being up 17%, this is what I'm talking about. The single family home inventory was up 39.5%. So we now have 1.5 months of inventory, which has been the highest level since March of 2021. This upward movement towards, again, a closer to normal pace in sales is certainly a welcomed trend for buyers desiring more options. However, keep in mind, this is why I say it's still a strong seller's market with only 0.88 months, 27 days of supply posted at the end of April. It's still a good time to sell. I've had listings. I had one this week that there were two other listings in the community that had been sitting on the market for a while. So we had, I'll call it a healthy expectation of what the pace might be. And I got 8 offers in the first 24 hours. So again, make sure you're working with a qualified agent if you're thinking about selling your home, but I don't want to discourage you. Even though we're moving towards a more balanced market, it's still a good time to sell. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. All right, pending sales. Pending sales were down 32% in April 2022 over April 2021. You can see it hasn't shifted a lot from prior months. February was down 36%. March was down 35%. And again, if you think about why are pending sales down, it's a raw function of the number of available homes to purchase. If you don't have a lot of homes to purchase, it's hard to have a lot of pending sales. And when we get to closed sales, it trickles down there as well. Median close price. So even though the inventory rate rose 39.5% in single family home market during April, the pent up demand for this property type did not temper its median closed price. You can see overall, and this is a combination of single family homes as well as condos, median sales price was up 36% year over year. You can see that's somewhat in line with what the previous couple of months have been doing. The overall median closed price in April increased year over year. The uptick really reflected a low number of sales in the 300 and below price category. So median closed prices continue to rise in single family homes. They were up 8.7% from March. So that's month over month, not year over year. But median close price during April in the condominium market actually decreased 1.1% from March. Another major factor when you think about this is that signified the market starting to self-correct to what we'll call the new normal in April is that there were in the month of April 549 price reductions. 33% of the inventory went through a price reduction. Now, last month, I reported that it was 25% of the properties went through a price reduction in the month of March. Now we're at 33%. I don't want people to necessarily panic, because the way I explain this is, we had been since about late October, early November, doing what I call leapfrogging, right? The neighbor sells their home. The next one says, wow, that looked easy. Let's tack another 100,000 on. The next neighbor does the same, and so on and so forth. So price reductions don't necessarily mean there's been this huge decline in values. It means that people hit the ceiling, and those that were still getting overzealous at the tail end of the leapfrogging, because guys, the leapfrogging is over. So it's time to really make sure, if you're listing your property, you're really doing a good job pricing, because the leapfrogging is over. But that's what these people who are overzealous are getting batted around, and you're seeing price reductions to get more within the normal range. Certainly as we continue through the year, list prices in some of the neighborhoods could shift down slightly. One of the things I'm pretty consistent in sharing is Naples is a very segmented, highly segmented market. Different price points behave differently within the market. Different communities behave differently within the market. You can have two communities right across the street from the other. So you would argue land value should be pretty steady between the two, and they may behave differently. So just know that, a lot of the broker analysts agree that we should not necessarily expect, if you're a buyer, home prices to drop anywhere near pre-pandemic levels. But in addition to the plateauing that we're seeing, you may actually see pockets of decrease in the coming months. New listings were down 3% year over year. It's not as low as it was. If you look at February new listings were down 14%. But again, remember, I had shared that inventory's up 17%. So new listings may be down, but the inventory is rising, which means there's more houses that aren't selling as quick. So it's really, again, a sign of what I call the slowing, if you will. Closed sales also continues to run lower year over year. So you can see February down 40%, March down 37%, and in April it was down 36%. Again, that's fueled by low inventory for purchase, the options to purchase homes. The 300,000 and below market was once the biggest category for closed sales in Naples, but those houses went so unbelievably quick when they hit that during the last 18 months, that inventory of 300,000 and below properties was severely depleted. So because of that, there were only 96 properties below the $300,000 price point that closed. So you can see a real big shift in those lower priced homes that got gobbled up quickly. My last statistic to share is days on market. So the demand for Naples lifestyle continues to remain strong. So even though the inventory is shifting a little bit, there's still good demand. In fact, when I look at some of my last couple listings that I've had, there's a great proportion of the showings that are agents coming and FaceTiming or video conferencing to show the property. So even though people may have gone home for the season and up to their full-time homes, they're still shopping around. If you look at, I just look at my summers. It used to be that in real estate, you could close up shop, leave in the summer, and not miss a beat. The last 2 years, and I'm already seeing this year, my summers have stayed pretty consistent, not as high as the high season, but certainly not what I would call low. So there still continues to be a demand. And when you've only got 16 days on the market for the month of April, that's historically, it was not uncommon to have 90 days on market. So you'll start to see this rise. April, the days on market is still lagging a little bit. I'm already seeing things that were previously getting offers within days, now hitting the 30-day mark. So I think we're going to see see inventory, as the inventory continues to rise, days on market is just, it's inevitable that it may also increase. So again, make sure you're pricing your homes correctly so that you don't sit for a long time, because where the market was very forgiving in the past about doing price adjustments, I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case going forward. So you've got to do a good job of really trying to make educated, data-driven decisions on how you're going to price it. And buyers, I wouldn't get overly confident that you're going to see these incredible deals that come up. So, it's still a good time to buy. It's still a good time to sell. And my biggest advice always is just make sure you get connected with not just a good agent, but a good agent who has a thumb on the market. It is fluid, and you want someone who proactively stays on top of it. So I always appreciate you taking in this short market update. Even when you're not in the market to buy or sell, it's always good to know what's going on, because it gives you a pulse on one of your biggest assets, which is your home. So if I can be of any assistance, again, Renee Hahn, William Ravis Real Estate. You can always find me at www.yournaplesexpert.com. Fantastic website, by the way, or call me 239-287-2576. Have a fabulous week.